Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, October 15th informational meeting. We'll call the meeting to order and start out with some committee reports. First, we'll hear from Public Services. I believe Councilor Sale has that report.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Selberg. We had a committee meeting and we learned about microblading, and I can put that, it's kind of like mini tattooing if you need new eyebrows. It's how it's done. The state has started to regulate that, and we are going to follow their ordinances and regulate it like tattooing.
Well, that's a very straight to the point report. Thank you very much. We have a question?
Oh, no, I'm just going to chime in. I was there as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And so it was very interesting, and they're actually going to bring forth, when they bring it to an informational, they're going to show us an example of what that actually looks like as they're etching in the eyebrows for that microblading. I did put something on Facebook about it, and I got a lot of feedback from people saying they thought it made sense. I think I had one person who was saying we shouldn't add more regulations to our business owners, but the fact that we are piercing the skin with a sharp object, I think what I'm hearing and what I kind of resonated with me is that merits the same regulation by our health department as a tattoo would when you're actually putting ink into the skin on different parts of your body. So it was very informational, and I know Janet Brecky, Councilor Brecky, has indicated that kind of presentation at first blush would have been nice to have everybody there as an informational. We'll get the same thing as a repeat too down the road, but anyway, it was very good. Thank you.
Okay. Next, we'll get a report on the South Dakota Municipal League Board of Directors meeting from last week from Councilor Erickson.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't at our Tuesday meeting because of our board meeting in Aberdeen before the conference started. So at our board meeting, we just really discussed kind of the conference coming up, a preview of that conference. And then we also talked in pretty much great length about the joint meeting with the counties in December and really what that looks like for municipalities across the state. I think you'll be happy to know that Rapid City and Sioux Falls really are leading the way in relationships with the counties. Everyone lives in the county and not everyone lives in a municipality. And so if we can jointly work with them for legislation and talking with them, their lobbyist was there along with another representative. It was a good conversation and really just talking about when we have our next board meeting in December, how we can partner together with them. It's certainly a desire of, I know, Sioux Falls as well as Rapid City. A little hesitation with some others, but just based on maybe some tarnished relationships over the years. We also talked about the code enforcement project update, which is being done jointly funded by the Municipal League for some of the smaller communities that don't have the funds to be able to fund that code enforcement position. There's 6 cities that are signed up for it and are moving forward, and so there'll be more coming for that. The other thing that we got an update on was the Buffalo chip update. I don't know how many of you are following that, but it's at the Supreme Court. They're having oral arguments last week in Vermilion, and really just talking about what that means when you incorporate to be a new city and how you can do that, and some of the legalese behind why maybe my opinion, in Buffalo chip wasn't done to the best that benefits all. So anyways, that will be, you'll see more, I'm sure, on the news, as well as more updates from Yvonne. That was the gist of our board meeting. And then we did have, I'm just gonna, if I can, Mr. Chair, just share a little bit about the conference. We had some good representation from the city administration as well as our staff that did attend. All of the different committees, that was passed unanimously. Some things taken off from each of those general committees, as well as some things added. One of the things that was discussed, Councilor Brecky and I are in the same general government committee, and she and I have talked about working together on this. It was an issue last year with the downtown building across from Sheila Hazard's building there across from the Levitt. These open space concept buildings are having some issues with licensed premise as well as where you can walk and not walk. You can't have more than one licensed presence sharing the same premise, so to speak, and so some of the laws are a bit archaic, but there's some unintended consequences, making sure that you just don't have a bunch of people walking around the mall with a cocktail in hand, or even the video lottery aspect got brought up as well. And so the board is working with a couple different legislators, as well as Councilor Brecky and I will be involved in that, drafting some legislation that will be beneficial to really the business community in Sioux Falls, as well as how business is changing. They have these same buildings in Pierre, Gettysburg, and I know there was one other city talked about. I do have the program I will leave upstairs if there's anybody interested in some of the speakers. There was a lot of talk about open meetings, as well as written communication, and also a lot of talk about social media and the effects of what you post and what you say on social media, and how you're one click away from a lawsuit oftentimes. The speaker was really good. He was from Georgia and had some good information, as well as David Fifley talked in great detail about open meetings. So that's the conference. Anybody else that was there that would like to chime in, you're sure welcome to. We had 3 counselors, 2 staff, and then the administration had several people. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilor Brecky, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't really have anything more to add. I would just agree that I thought it was very worthwhile, and that the informational sessions were very pertinent to issues that we're facing here in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It was a good couple of days. Not a real fun drive home, but other than that, good stuff.
White knuckle drive home.
Right, exactly.
And you won an Apple Watch. So, I mean, you stay till the end, you're going to get a door prize. So.
That's right. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, we'll move on to City Council open discussion. Anybody have anything today? Councilor Staley?
Yes, thank you. I have several things. Got a few photos to go with it. The first item I was going to share is that yesterday was Native American Day, and there was a parade downtown. If you want to go back to that first one, please. And Councilor Starr and I both walked in the parade. It was well attended. The people within that community were very appreciative to have people from our government participating. And, you know, it's interesting. You can go to the next one. I should have that clicker in my hand here. There was just all sorts of things. You can go to the next one. There's having a little fun before the parade there. And they had the Flandreau ROTC came, the kids who are involved with that. But I know that there was a debate going on within, at least online with Facebook, of people. There's a debate why we change it from Columbus Day to Native American Day. And I believe it's been about 30 years since it was the 90s when we made the change. I thought someone said 3 decades in South Dakota. So anyway, I thought it was a great event, and I totally support Native American people and their efforts to thrive and maintain their culture along with integrating into our society. So that's first thing. Second thing, last Thursday, I took the opportunity, as our mayor, people may not know this, but many times our mayor is called upon to do a proclamation, and so, or give a little speech, and so he's been putting this out for us to, counselors to do that if they would like. So he couldn't go to this domestic violence, it was called Take Back the Night event last Thursday. So I went to this and read the proclamation. As I was sitting at this table, I noticed these bikers there. I said, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And they said, "Well, we are a group called Bikers Against Child Abuse." And they actually step in, and they said they have 3 chapters in our state, but they connect with these kids somehow, and they, especially children who have some fear of retaliation for testifying against their abusers, And I just thought it was like really cool that they are doing that. Within the program, of course, the mayor made a proclamation that he was making October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we heard a young woman talking, the speaker, about her journey through domestic violence. And apparently, as we may all know, alcohol plays a huge role in people being abused, whether it's verbal abuse or physical abuse. And many times alcohol abuse happens behind closed doors. And so the woman who was speaking was talking about how important it is to surround yourself with healthy people as you're on that road to recovery, making good choices. Usually this group, excuse me, goes out and does a little walk, but if you remember last Thursday, we were kind of on the verge of that big snowstorm that we had. So that was very rewarding to be at that event. And then the third event, you want to go to the one right after that first, we had our neighborhood summit. It'll be 2 weeks this Saturday. Thanks to Mayor Tenhagen. If you're listening, Mayor, thank you for listening to Councilor Brecky as we asked you to reinvigorate this and bring it back. There were 4 councilors there, myself, Councilor Greg Neisert there, Janet Brecky, and then Marshall Selberg was there. He had to leave, but he was there at the beginning. And Pastor Rich Merkwois, I think I'm saying his name right, he's there on the end. He was the facilitator, and he did a fabulous job. He kept things on time. It started at 8:20, and it went till noon, and that guy he moved things along so beautifully. We had staff members there from our city talking about things from code enforcement to housing to transit, and it was very informational. And to me, a highlight of this thing was as we heard from our neighborhood associations. We have neighborhood watch groups and associations in our town. They're active, they're alive, they're connecting with their neighbors, and that is really what's going to keep our city safe, as we build upon these localized efforts to watch out for one another. So they got a chance to ask questions to us as council members at the beginning. How often do you have 4 council members as a captive audience? Not very often, where you're responding back and forth. And also, they had a chance to address the city staff. It was wonderful. The only regret I have about that event was that it was not videotaped by our city. Who did videotape it? Next slide, please. None other than citizen activist, volunteer, premier videotaper, Bruce Danielson. Put the whole thing on tape, put it up on YouTube, and I really wish the city, I had asked 2 days before that if they were going to videotape it. They said no. We have a great IT department. There's no reason we can't be doing that. I do have a message into the mayor because he indicated somehow he was going to put some kind of video up on the city website about this event, and I was curious as to what video that would be since we didn't video it. Maybe he's going to be borrowing some of Mr. Danielson's video. That would be lovely. But anyway, it was a great thing. I hope they continue to have this every year. And then, last but not least, great news. Great news. We're starting a Project Trim test area. Project Trim is where the city has in the past had the residents trim their own trees. They come through, they designate an area, and they put out a notice to the resident, the homeowner, hey, you got a boulevard tree that needs to be trimmed. You either hire the contractor, do it yourself, or we'll come out at a minimum of $150 and do it for you. I have long felt that this is something the city should be providing for its citizens. And the park department, thanks to help from our city staff members, meeting with them and some council members, they have agreed to do a pilot project just to see how much it's actually going to cost for the city to go out and trim these trees. So we have a 6x2 area, block area, that in the Hilltop area, I believe they're starting, Jim, am I right? I think next Monday, like the 20th or something. And they're going to be trying it out to see if this is something that we could feasibly do for our residents. Just another reminder that during the budget process, my colleagues supported another project that we're going to have a $50,000 fund to help people in need who can't afford to pay for that right now. So we're still having the residents pay for the project trim. But if this thing is reasonably priced, I could see this moving ahead, and maybe we'll start to take care of our own boulevard trees like they do in Watertown, Brookings, Fargo, and Aberdeen. They all have departments that care for their city-owned boulevard trees. So just wanted to put that out as well. Thank you.
Anybody else on open discussion? Counselor Starr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilor Staley. I know I had a great time walking through the Native American Day Parade yesterday. It's amazing how many friends you can make with a small Tootsie Roll or a candy bar and make people smile by the time they were done. I also got to participate with my family at the Multicultural Center last night. I must be getting old enough because I really enjoy the fancy shawl dancing because it's quiet. In comparison to the jingle dancers that come through, and to hear that. So it must be part of age, not enjoying that as much as I used to. The other thing this last week, it turned into quite an emotional time for me just because I've been working with a number of groups on different areas, and the media had a story about a part of town that's struggling, that there's some real issues, and I want to thank Angela Kennecke for pointing some of those things out and starting that discussion, at least with the rest of the public. One of those things after these type of media stories hit, I don't know about the rest of you, but my phone started to ring. And probably the one that was the most interesting is I have a friend that works in federal law enforcement. And they had a group that was serving some warrants in that part of town just in the last couple of months. And they sat and watched a minimum of 4 drug deals that happened in that parking lot, or they're suspected that that's what was going on. And in the one instance of those 4, the lady who bought what they suspected was heroin sat down in the middle of the parking lot and started shooting up right there, and didn't feel the need to at least go someplace private or hide it. And we're at that point that as a community, we need to address this. We can no longer sit back and allow people to live in storage units. Even if it's cheap and we're worried that they may have to go somewhere else or it may make them homeless. Living in substandard environments, and tenants can no longer be scared of the retribution that would come with it if they did complain to the city. Our code enforcement, our planning division does a great job of trying to keep those things as private as they can. We have some great landlords in our community, and that's not where I'm intending this. But what was interesting is then another of the phone calls I got at 9 o'clock on Saturday night was a friend from my church, and said, Pat, I just can't take it anymore. I haven't had heat since last March, that the main heating unit in our apartment complex doesn't work. And the tenants were told that they would have, that they wouldn't be able to do anything in the spring, but they would get the unit changed out over the summer. And we all know what it was like last week, and they told them that they should use space heaters. And so she had to go out and borrow a space heater because she doesn't have the resources, and she's trying to heat her unit with 3 space heaters. And I think we all know how, first of all, it's not legal in the city of Sioux Falls to use a space heater as a primary heating source. But I want to thank the code enforcement department, because I texted Saturday night, and I know we don't have emergency code enforcement, or what I would call emergency code enforcement, and I got a response within about 10 minutes. And I think it's because I bother Matt all the time that he figured that he better take care of it before that. Right away, but was able to do something and work with the property management group, who said they didn't realize that it was a problem to use space heaters as a primary heating source, which seemed pretty basic to me, but I'm not in the business, so maybe that's part of it. But I guess this person didn't reach out to me until it became such a serious concern for them that they just couldn't take it anymore, because they were so worried, because they've lived in this unit for 34 years. And being that concerned, the retribution would be there. And I've heard from from the Multi-Housing Association, I've heard from a lot of great landlords about the damage that's done by renters. It's not a one-way street. I don't claim it to be a one-way street, but at the same time, I think this is not only an area of town we need to do something, but we need to work with people who do rent and move that forward. And like I said, I wanted to share that a little bit because I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. How do we fix that? How do you, as a property owner with 5,000 calls for service in the last 3 years, not have something that you need to be part of to fix the solution? You go right across the street and you have a management company that runs Pettigrew Heights. They don't have a piece of trash on their anywhere in their environment that they have. They have cameras and they have people that watch. It gets cleaned up on a regular, well, it doesn't get cleaned up because it doesn't get dirty because they have a pride in ownership. They don't have people sitting in the middle of their parking lots shooting heroin in their arm. And there is a responsibility for the property owner to step up and do the right thing. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? All right, we'll move on to today's presentations. First, we have a presentation on the rail yard development, rail yard flats in Charapa 2 by Director Eckhoff. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Jeff Eckhoff, Planning and Development Services. It is my pleasure this afternoon to bring to you this project for the rail yard. Dustin's going to pull up a map here in just a second to give you an orientation. So as you may remember, there are approximately 10 acres in the rail yard redevelopment site, and it's been split into 5 different parcels, starting up north of 6th Street and ending south of 8th Street. Today we're going to focus on parcels B and C. B is immediately adjacent to Charapa Place, and then C is bordered by 8th Street on the south. We're going to spend most of our time on the parcel C, just so as Jeff talks to you about that, you're clear on where those parcels are. We have entered into an agreement with Jeff Schurslick. It's a 2-part agreement, and Dustin, after Jeff's presentation, Dustin will get up and give you more of the details and pricing and some of that. But it's a 2-part agreement where we close on parcel C by the end of the year, and Jeff will start development right away next spring. And then he has 2 years to pull the project together for project B, which will be a larger, more substantial kind of working title of Charapa 2 for that. As I looked at the rail yard redevelopment plan, some things leapt out to me about this project. And one of the things it talked about in the plan was connectivity to the east, to the Whittier neighborhood, expanding those boundaries of downtown. And this takes us one step closer to the tracks. It helps us develop to that neighborhood where is development in our core. And I think it's awful important to the health of the city and the long-term vision of downtown. Talks about walkability and connectivity, and this certainly does that. This is the traditional, you'll see live, work, and play opportunities to work and to go to entertainment venues, as well as have a nice place to live downtown. It activates and leverages existing downtown development. You're going to see how this fits in, and particularly with what Larry Howe is doing in the East Bank Depot project that's under construction right now. And this will be a beautiful addition, and you'll see soon how that fits into the existing development down there. At this point, I get to introduce Jeff Schurslick, who is no stranger to this body or to this community. He is certainly one of our proven leaders in this town and has done so much for us in so many ways. He says a significant investment in Charapa 1, and so it's with great comfort you enter into these agreements knowing that he's going to be a neighbor to himself, and he'll develop to a high quality, which is what he always does. Takes me back to when we first moved to town and the Zip feed mill was still standing, and it doesn't seem that long ago, but now here we are at the other end of that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jeff Schurslick to talk about his project.
Welcome.
Council, citizens of Sioux Falls, thanks for having me here today. We're going to talk about the Sioux Falls Rail Yard development and future Charapa 2. The vision continues. I'm Jeff Schurslick. founding partner, I guess, and managing partner of Pender Properties, which is a family development company. It's been almost 15 years since I was in front of this body. We bought the ZIP land, us and Raven Industries, in 2004. The big boom was 2005, and ultimately during those times we were negotiating with the city on a public-private partnership and et cetera. And so that vision, you know, was driven to develop that area of the ZIP feed site. But at that time, we even knew, you know, there was money set aside for the rail yard relocation. We didn't realize it would take almost 15 years for that to happen. So that's maybe the difference between entrepreneurship and government, is how quickly we can get things done. But ultimately, over these 15 years, I think we've all been able to see tremendous growth in Sioux Falls, tremendous growth in downtown, and we hope to think we've been a bit a part of that with what we've done with Sharapa. You know, before going into Rail Yard Flats and our vision for Sharapa 2, we want to give you just a little history, because when I talked to somebody here with KSFY and I talked about Sharapa and I said it was 15 years ago, you know, she was still, I think, in middle school. So, you know, not everybody remembers the Sharapa story. But I think that, you know, the important thing is to remember that it was a special public-private partnership that made Sharapa come to life. That as purchasers of the ZIP site, and the big boom event, if you will recall that as part of kind of a city celebration, we went from failure to success. But to begin with, the Sharapa purchase, or the ZIP feed purchase, was purchased with, first of all, what was right for the community. Raven Industries and Howalt McDowell, we came together to buy that land because I saw an opportunity in the original drawings that there could have been an office complex in the front of the event center, but the real purpose was to set that land aside for the potential of the city building the event center downtown. So we were just serving our community. That was what it was all about. At the same point, we were extremely interested in redeveloping the East Bank. You know, to a certain degree, that was considered the other side of the tracks or the other side of the river. And at the same point, folks, that the whole concept of the public-private partnership was to move forward with the River Greenway plan. That had been a concept for over 20 years in our community, and yet it had never got done. And I believe in getting things done, and again, on behalf of the community. At the same point, our focus on Sharapa, when we originally put that together, was also a focus on our employees and giving them a good environment downtown, and most importantly, staying downtown. I had always been part of downtown. I didn't feel like it was right to go out to the edges of town, but to continue to leave my business and my people downtown. And lastly, there was a huge green focus. Sharapa was the first LEED Gold certified building in South Dakota. At the same point, that means a lot of things from an environmental friendly, doing things right, doing things quality, but also the green in my mind is the native grasses that you see, the wildflowers that you see, so it's not all concrete and buildings. With that, the next slide here. I think this is a really telling map of what a successful public-private partnership is. This is a map showing downtown East Bank in 2004 and now in 2019. So basically what you're seeing is growth, development, moving things along. You know, it obviously spurred the River Greenway, and the first phase of the Greenway was out in front of Sharapa as you look at the map. You know, at the same point, Sharapa Place was the first building that turned its face to the riverfront. So we struggled with that because everybody couldn't understand, well, wait a minute, everyone wanted to come in our back door because our back door was a typical front door when it came down to it. But it also connected the people to the riverfront. It added the connectivity, it added the walking, it added the bridges. It also was kind of, I believe, you know, we used good architecture, good quality materials. We used quartzite, our historic stone in this area. Part of the Sharapa project was redoing the depot, so we tied in history We tied in Quartzsite. We tied in the people. We tied in the River Greenway. Again, all of that in a public-private partnership with the community, and ultimately we think help lead to and spur things like the Lumber Exchange, the Hilton Garden Inn, the Raven remodel, and recently the Arc of Dreams. Again, I just want to remind folks, I call that a successful public-private partnership. I hope you believe the same. Forward to now. Pender Properties. It's a family development, ownership, and management built on 3 guiding principles. To design and build beautiful buildings, keeping quality, timeless, and sustainability at the forefront of all discussions and decisions. To always focus on premium, long-term investments that are dedicated to supporting our community, our environment, and local arts. And to take a people-centric approach to management by creating the best living and working environment possible. That's our family. That's because we're citizens of Sioux Falls, we're committed to Sioux Falls, we're committed to downtown. And tying that even further together, we've partnered and brought together people in this area, which is kind of bordering 8th Street to 6th Street on the East Bank. And so part of all what we're going to bring to you today, Rail Yard Flats, is partnered with the Howe family, who is in the process. They already own buildings there, and they're redoing the East Bank Depot building into a dynamic space that will add to what we're doing, and this is a cooperative effort. Our joint project that we're going to show you in a minute, the visuals, will be about a $13 million project. We'll talk about some of the statistics in a minute, but I also want to remind you, and I think that this is forgotten, is that, folks, I'm not an expert at this. You know, I guess I do this part-time, but I've been involved for quite a while. Our family not only has developed Sharapa, we rejuvenated the Carpenter Building downtown. We redid the Edge project right down here on Main Street, and now we're committed to more. But what I'm finding, folks, is we have a bit of a disconnect because we are totally committed to quality. And so when I was pricing things for the RFP for the city that we responded to previously, I experienced that the Sharapa cost, what I built Sharapa for 12 years ago, was going to increase to do what I call Sharapa 2. The cost was going to increase 40% construction cost. And in that 12 years, I've got a 15% increase in rents. Now, I don't know how you think that works. I don't know how you think that we're doing. I think there's a belief that we all just make tons of money. I want to make you understand that when you're going to do quality and when you're committed to what you're doing, this is not an easy formula to pull together. However, we have confidence in Sioux Falls. We have confidence in downtown, and we're long-term thinkers. And along with the private partners, the public-private partnership, it spurs us to move forward. When I talk about public-private partnership, hopefully, just like the River Greenway, we're talking with the city. Originally we're going to require that we get the quiet zone, but we're going to be real pains in the asses to keep pushing this community to put quiet zones downtown. You're asking us to invest this kind of money? I think that this is just a start. Take a look at the projects over 26th Street today, 59th Street, 85th Street. That was all done to get the rails going through the communities more efficiently. So I'm hoping we can do that. The other part of this formula is, folks, I'm just about ready to retire, and my wife believes for better or for worse, but not for lunch. So I need something to do. So I promise I'm going to get this done. Team. Again, one of the things I was extremely proud of was when we did the Sharapa Place project. It was developed by Sioux Falls people. It was designed by Sioux Falls people. It was constructed by Sioux Falls people. And it was occupied by Sioux Falls people. You know, a lot of times we think we got to go out of town to get the right things done. I disagree. We've got the talent here in town. Again, we've talked about the developers of this project are going to be the Pender Properties, which is the Schurslick family, and it's going to include the Howe family, who has a major investment in downtown already. The design group will be the Co-op and the Confluence folks, two local firms here that are dedicated to what we want to do. And we are committed to Journey Construction, a company that has a reputation for quality construction. So again, quality, local, and are committed to this vision. And again, I think you're going to find that we are going to be able to get this done. So now let's take a look at the fun part, the pretty pictures. We're going to take you on this is just a snapshot of what you're seeing here on 8th Street, but we're going to take you through kind of a visual tour, and I'm going to talk a little bit during it, if that's okay, because we didn't have time to add music to it, but, you know, if you want me to sing, I could do that as well, but probably not. So if we can run that video, I think you'll kind of enjoy it. Really brings it to life. And I think the thing that you're going to find, folks, is this is real. So here you see the East Bank Depot going. You're seeing the rail yard flats now. And that rail yard flats, part of the requirement is it's supposed to have a historic industrial type look, so you can see the use of brick materials, kind of an industrial look and et cetera to the project. And yet you're going to see in a moment, you're going to see modern features that really makes the project pop. We think this is the highest and best use for this site. There's density, but at the same point, if you've already experienced Sharapa, you know there's a lot of green. And I'm a little bit committed to green. So if you kind of go along 8th Street from Sharapa down to what is going to be Rail Yard Flats, there ain't much green, folk. But you're going to see when you get to Rail Yard Flats that we're adding the green component. So that's grasses and trees and native grasses and walking paths and those type of things. You just saw the public courtyard. This was a recommendation of the city folks to help get traffic flow going from the East Bank over from 8th Street into the center of Sharapa and then flowing into the Arc of Dreams and the River Greenway. The other thing is you'll see that we've already talked to Sculpture Walk. The Sculpture Walk will be added into the courtyard that you're seeing there at this point in time. So basically, folks, you're seeing two dynamic projects, the East Bank Depot, the Rail Yard Flats. What this does is, I say, fill in the missing tooth on 8th Street. This isn't, and I've gotten a lot of, oh my God, Jeff, I thought you were doing Sharapa too. And they're a little disappointed that this isn't the big project. But you know what this is? This is a realistic project. This is a project that's going to get done, that we're not going to have a failure of not getting it completed. It's going to be quality. It's going to be, it's going to get this started. And as I show in the next piece, the map here, part of the impetus behind this was East Bank Depot, that it allows us to take and create flow from the Sharapa parking lot. It cleans up this area. It's the first project on the railroad yard relocation, just like Sharapa was really the first major project on the East Bank. So I like to be an innovator, I like to be a leader, and I like to see people follow. And I think that we've seen that with Sharapa. But what you see again is flowage. So you can now, we have an ability to move our 350 to 450 people out of Sharapa. We only have one exit on 8th Street right now. We will have 3 exits on 8th Street. At the same point, the East Bank Depot, which is heavily retail oriented, will have 350 to 400 and some cars go by it every morning and evening at the same time. So again, this is just the visual map of what we're doing, but you'll also see a bike trail. You'll see a green berm to break off the rail yard a little bit and those type of things. You've seen the outside. We're working on some really dynamic ideas for the insides of this building because we believe in something special. Because when that's done, a project like Sharapa, it spurs everybody else to follow along and do quality things as well. Next, here's some details of the project. We're looking at square feet of office retail, probably office on the 2nd floor, which we really have somebody pretty much committed to that already. We have retail on the main level to serve the community, tie into the courtyard. There'll be 42 apartments, maybe going to 44. We're looking at that right now. There'll be inside parking spaces, 42 inside parking places for folks, and 40 exterior parking. One of the things that we've done is parking is dear downtown, folks. I've done my best to try to accomplish what we can, but I gave up awful lot of parking here because I'm so committed to green and making it feel right and feel that it's going to bring that kind of that inviting part of this project. So I think that's what we are committed to when it comes down to. So connectivity and green, and you'll see some statistics here. We'll go into Sharapa 2 and we'll maybe come back to this. But with that, that is the parcel C we're talking about, folks. So we've struck a deal with the city to hopefully buy that portion with your permission and et cetera. I think we've talked about this. And it also includes the B, which is right behind Sharapa. And so what this does is line up all of the land from the River Greenway on the 6th Street side all the way back to the railroad track for another dynamic Sharapa 2 project. So basically that includes an option per se for the partial B, but I want to take a look, I want you to understand this, folks, that I've been talking to the city and et cetera, that we are not your typical developers, and we really are committed to doing what is right for this community. Now, we're business people, so we can't just build it and they will come, but we're going to build, and we kind of look at this site now as being a city site, that what is going to be the highest and best use for Sharapa 2 property. We've all invested a lot of money down there. We've invested a lot of money in Sharapa Place. The community has invested a lot of money in the River Greenway. Raven Industry has invested a tremendous amount of money on their project across the way, and the Lloyds have tremendous amount of stuff across the 8th Street. However, so that's what we look at when we talk about trying to acquire B and working together to find the right project. So we're going to show you some things here that was created by Coke Hazard and the late Jeff Hazard. And one of the things I had an opportunity to do, folks, in the last couple of weeks of Jeff's life is I sat down with him and we went over the RFP, and Greg, you were part of that Jeff had worked on and his team. And we had some dynamic visions for that site. And I looked Jeff, my friend, in the eye, and I said, damn it, I'm going to do my best in my lifetime, Jeff, to make this become a reality for you, but for your vision and what you had for this community. So as you look at some of the stuff that we're going to show you here, think of our good friend Jeff Hazard, and what an honor it would be if we can make this become a reality, not only for this community, but for our good friend Jeff. But as I talk about a community asset, and you see pictures here, you see Sharapa up in the left-hand corner, you see it down below, you see the connectivity of the Riverfest and the River Greenway and the people connectivity and the riverfront and people walking along and et cetera. The other thing we want to do is create a dynamic public space between the two buildings. I call it the courtyard, or the interconnect between the buildings and et cetera. But we have created, Jeff Hazard, with his brilliance and his desire and my desire to serve the community, we've created plans for originally bringing the event center to this land originally. We've created a plan. There was talk from councilors that we would like to see a downtown convention center. We drew up plans. When CNA was going to leave downtown, we drew up plans and spent money to create a plan to keep them downtown. At the same point, we created a 79-page document, an RFP that we responded to that was very detailed and very thoughtful, because what we want to do is the right thing for this particular property. Next, this is the big Sharapa vision, folks. So again, we're just starting. Sharapa 1 was the beginning. If you look today in this picture here, you look way over to the right, you see the white building that was just a concept, which is the rail yard flats that we've shown you, the dynamic rail yard flats and what we're doing there. But what you see beyond that is really more density up on the river, embracing our riverfront, creating density behind that. That's going to take a large parking structure. That wraps it with 109 parking or apartments, more retail, more office. All this entails just an awful lot of commitment to doing what is right for the community. But this is only a vision. We don't have Sharapa 2 put together, folks. We've worked on a hotel, but again, there's been a lot of movement in the hotel world today. We've worked on other projects that people have come to us with. We want to make sure that we do the right thing, but we are going to embrace the River Greenway. We're going to have mixed use to serve this community, and we're going to create the density as Sioux Falls continues to grow. Ultimately, this here could include 150 to 200,000 square feet of additional downtown space and 40 to $50 million in investments over the $13 million we anticipate with the rail yard flats. Now, again, I want to make clear, I don't have the big Sharapa to put together, but we're if you want to call it, we could almost call ourselves, if we put this deal together, shovel ready. And shovel ready means, if you know me, we know how to get her done when it comes down to it. So, with that, here's a picture of the site. Again, you'll get a sense of, you'll see rail yard flats in the right bottom corner there. That was the original concept. It's changed from this design. It's moved closer over to the East Bank Depot building. It's put in the courtyard, the walking, but we've created that whole idea of a walking path and an ability to enter into the middle of the Sharapa property and connect into the Sharapa property, connect out into the River Greenway, and hopefully tying it all the way down to the river. You'll see all the way along the river or along the railroad tracks would be a bike trail taking it all the way down. We will start to construct the first part of that. We're encouraging the city as being creative. We're trying to bring parties together to build more of that bike trail so that we get her done earlier in rather than later when it comes down to it. Again, the other thing you'll see here is an attempt to have green and a central park. So as we continue to develop this, some people get all turned off by that there's parking lots. I don't have a solution there, folks, other than parking garages or parking structures, and you know how difficult those are, and we've still tried to serve our folks. So we found a combination of green and the whole parking deal when it comes down to it. In conclusion, folks, the Pender and Howe Group is ready to proceed with rail yard flats and the phase one of what we call our Sharapa 2 vision. We appreciate the opportunity to continue to enhance our community and to further shine the downtown jewel that we already have. As I said, you know, I'm a citizen of this community. I've grown up here my whole life. I do care. I commit to you that you'll see that we'll do it right. You'll be proud of what we do. And I can tell you this. You will not be disappointed. You will not find that this project will be canceled. If you approve what we have worked out with your city people and et cetera, we'll get her done. You'll see there's already progress over there tying into the East Bank Depot, but the rail yard flats project will happen. The ground will be broken in the spring, and we'll get this baby done. And when it gets all done, that'll just be phase one of Sharapa 2. And hopefully I'm back here within another year or two, because remember, better or worse, but not for lunch, that I'll have something to do and we'll be able to do a Sharapa 2. Thank you. I appreciate your attention. Please ask any questions that you have.
Thank you, Jeff. Do we have more for the?
Good afternoon, Council. Dustin Powers with the Planning Office. A couple things that we wanted to go through, just some high-level details of the what we'll be bringing forward. Obviously, Jeff has wowed you with the experience of rail yard flats and what the Sharapa 2 vision can hold, but want to just go over a couple details of what we're looking at with the offer to purchase. So a couple of things. So Jeff Eckhoff as well as Jeff Shirtlick kind of talked about this being a two-part agreement in terms of the two parcels that we're looking at. So what we'll be looking at is parcel C, which is where rail yard flats would be constructed. We've been in discussions with Jeff and we're working on the city would retain at least a portion along the eastern edge of the property that would be where the bike trail would be connected. So parcel C is approximately 63,000 square feet. What we've agreed to with Jeff is a $10 per square foot price for the property. And so ultimately, the purchase agreement that you'll see coming forward here soon would be for the purchase of C at $632,710. Now, parcel B, and what we've worked out within the purchase agreement is establishing the price for what parcel B would already be per square foot. And so what we've shown up here is maybe not exactly the end purchase price for parcel B, but we wanted to show it to you for comparison. Parcel B is a little bit larger. What I would say though is that 95,000 square feet hasn't taken out any consideration for what the bike trail could look like or any other city property that may be maintained at that time. So that's the maximum price that would be collected for parcel B, but did want to show you a total of what the land sale value for both parcels would be. Ultimately, again, we would be in the offer to purchase agreeing to a $10 per square foot, but giving him an extended period of time on parcel B to look at Sharapatu and that vision. So again, a total land sale could be a potential of up to $1,586,000. A couple other details that we've kind of highlighted already in the purchase agreement are related to the closing of those properties. So what we would be looking at is for the property parcel C where rail yard flats would be constructed, we'd be looking at bringing that part of the project forward to you here in the next couple of months and looking at trying to close on that property by the end of the year. That would give Jeff enough time to start the project in the spring of 2020. Parcel B again, we would be looking at an extended closing, giving him that option to vet Sharapatu vision and giving him a little bit extended period before we'd actually transfer property. And so what the agreement would call out is an extended period for closing, saying that the closing wouldn't occur until approximately the end of 2021. Now, if he has a project that comes forward sooner than that, we could obviously do that sooner. But before we could close on the property, we would have to enter into a development agreement for parcel B. So when that project comes forward, we would detail what that would look like in a development agreement. So what you'll see coming forward is what we're targeting is to bring these agreements forward to you in November with ultimately the ability to then close by the end of the year. What you'll see is an ordinance coming forward that would approve the surplus of the property. It would also approve the offer to purchase, which details the purchase price that was shown for parcel C, which was the $600,000 value, and then also an agreement that we would be agreeing to $10 a square foot for parcel B, with the ultimate price being determined by the development and the development agreement that would come forward at a later date. So again, you'll see a development agreement for parcel C. We didn't share a lot of the details with that today, but that'll ultimately hold Jeff and his group accountable for developing the project that they shared with you, Rail Yard Flats, today, as well as the timeline for construction with that. So in summary, we believe this is a great opportunity to partner with a local individual and company that has partnered with the city before, as well as provided significant investment into the East Bank area that has transformed that East Bank. The Rail Yard Flats project, along with the vision for Sharapatu, aligns with the vision and the goals that were established in the Rail Yard redevelopment plan, and we're excited in the following month to bring you forward agreements that will ink the deal pending your approval and get the start of the Rail Yard redevelopment happening. So with that, the three of us, Director Jeff Scherschlick and myself, are here to answer any questions you may have about the project or the property.
Thank you for the presentation. Councilors, what questions do you have? Councilor Sale?
Thank you. Maybe this is for Director Eickhoff. Earlier this year, I had an opportunity to meet with Mr. Scherschlick, and we went over his plan at that time. He provided some documentation to me. I have the appraisal that was done at that time, and most of the land was appraised at $7 a square foot. And we've agreed to a sale price of $10 a square foot. To me, that's a better deal for the city in simple math. Could you explain to us how you brought the price from $7 to $10 for us?
Certainly. So whenever we enter into a sale, the city is required to do an appraisal as well. And ours came in substantially higher And you can always argue about methodology and comparables and all that. But one thing appraisals do not do well is account for extenuating circumstances. So the fact that he's by an active rail line, in fact that he's kind of pushing development to the edge of where existing development is, are not accounted for in that appraisal. It also talks about, or it doesn't account for the fact that we really hadn't had any other offers, and Jeff had come to us twice, once in the RFP process and once in this process. And so the $10 was kind of arrived in between as his appraisal of 7 and the higher appraisal that we had.
Thank you.
Counselor Staley.
Oh, Mr. Eckhoff, he's just stay, yes, and Counselor Brecky and I also had a chance to visit with Mr., I believe last spring, and we had the same conversation about the $7, and at that time I had asked the city to do an appraisal, because I think that was what we do in fairness to the citizens for this money. And so $7 was what Mr. Schurslick had indicated. And so when you came back last week and said to me you had agreed on the $10, and I believe, what did we pay, about $16 the feds paid for the land?
15.
15. So in light of the fact that my understanding is no one else in our community has stepped up to do anything with that property. Am I correct in that?
To date, that's correct.
So,
On this site.
and it has been advertised? I mean, it was, so to me, just so publicly, I'm going to say this, I'll shout this from the mountaintops, that I think this sounds like a reasonable deal for the citizens to go this route. He's not asking us at this point for a TIF. I mean, we're only developing something that has been sitting vacant for quite a long time. So I'm excited about that. And let me also say, Mr. Schurslick, as a gardener, every time I go to your property, Sharapa, 1, I'm so impressed with what you've done with this naturalization of landscaping. And I love what you're showing on this, getting away from that concrete model and having that greenery. That is so exciting and so beneficial for the environment and for our community. So I like that very much. Well, now let's come back to one more thing, if I could ask one more question. Now, one thing we didn't discuss, Mr. Eckhoff, is what happens now. We got the two pieces of land being purchased here, one with a little caveat as to what happens in the next 2 years. And you're going to pay for both of them at the same time, right?
No,
Oh, so the
he'll
other one
close
just has the agreement.
Yeah, he'll just close on parcel C this year, and then he has until the end of 2021 to close on parcel B, or to walk away at that time if his project doesn't come together, which, knowing Jeff, it'll come together.
Right, but I thought you said there was something about if something happens and Jeff doesn't come through, because we're holding, you got a placeholder situation for that parcel, that there was something about we get it back for 80%
The
of,
percentage of what they call liquidated damages, and that'll be in the development agreement that you'll be looking at next, or in the 5th of that first reading. But there is a clause for, basically, you take some of their money and hold it back if they walk away. And it depends on circumstances. So if something happens that's no fault of the buyer, it's very common for them to get their earnest money back if they just decide not to do the project and then there is oftentimes some of that retained.
so there's going to be an amount of earnest money put aside for that second parcel that we will hold for 2 years. Are you at that, on the first reading, will you be able to tell us that amount of money?
Yes.
And then that we would keep, if something, that should be actually spelled out as to under what terms we would keep that money. Not that Mr. Schurslick is not going to come through on it, but I think that in light of other things that have happened with our citizens and deals, that to protect the best interest of our community, just to say this is, under these circumstances, we will keep that money.
Those will be the terms that'll be part of the agreements that we'll talk about on the 5th, yes.
Thank you.
May I comment on that?
Certainly.
I've asked for that option because, first of all, I've struggled when I go out and try to find the right person for this property. If I don't know what kind of deal I have, how do I make a deal with somebody? It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I've asked for that, number one. Number two is, I don't even want the option if it's going to have a lot of penalty to it, because I'm going to tell you that I'm only going to deploy this property to the right usage. This is not what I do for a living, folks. This has to be the right project. So you're giving me 2 years, and I got to be honest, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people, there's not been people showing a lot of interest in this property other than me. It really ties into what we have. So I really think, again, this is the partnership. There will be a penalty, but I really want to talk about that being fair, because otherwise I'll just take my chances. Because ultimately, the idea that I don't think many people are going to come along and try to sweep up this property, because it's hard to develop. It's a narrow piece along a rail track. At the same point, what you're going to find on parcel B is that quartzite is probably a foot under the surface. Now, you'll see a design here on rail yard flats. Just to put it into perspective, folks, our plan is to go halfway down with our parking, and right now we found that on the north end of this, the quartzite is 2.5 feet from the surface. So there's a lot of issues to deal with here. So Teresa, I really respect what you're saying. I appreciate your comments, and I'd like to find this in a public-private partnership, and that ultimately we want to deploy this property to the highest and best use, and we don't want to just rush into something so I can get it bought. That is not my purpose here, folks. Then you're dealing with the wrong cowboy. My desire is to do a quality projects here on C, and on B, give me 2 years so that I know what my price is, and give me the opportunity to try to find the right party. And at the same point, I may come to you and say, here's what's happened in the last 2 years, folks. Let's keep talking. Maybe we want to extend that, maybe not. Let's just work together. And again, no hard feelings if it doesn't work out. But I really think that we're the right ones to help develop this, because the real value to this property is the front on the River Greenway that we both have made a lot of investments in. Thank you.
Councilor Neitzer.
I have a few comments and a couple questions. The first is, speaking to that particular issue, really what it sounds like is, and it may be structured different, but conceptually we're giving you a 2-year option. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a 2-year option to buy.
That's what I look at it as, yes.
Yeah, and maybe it's structured slightly different, but I don't know that we would be suffering quote-unquote damages. It's just that if I have an option to buy a piece of land, I'm going to pay some sort of a fee for that option, so I have the right to buy it. And so whatever that may be, and maybe they'll structure it where, at the end, if he doesn't, then however it works out. But essentially, it's an option we're looking at. It's not like a no completion thing or something. So I do have a question for you. Yes, but I do want to say first, and this kind of tags on what Councilor Staley was talking about. As I go on the bike trail and I come off and I'm just walking around Sharapa, and I talk about this with my daughter and my wife. It's just gorgeous. Just the building and the wild grasses and everything else, and the fact that you've put in the all of the native stuff and the green when it could be just a concrete jungle. It's really, really, and obviously what you did with the building, it's iconic. And so when I was standing there watching the Arc of Dreams being lit up for the first time, we were looking at Sharapa, and it was just gorgeous.
Thank you, and Nathaniel is over here. I do want to give him credit. You won't even find a cigarette butt on the Sharapa property. That's the pride that he takes and his team. And it takes work, folks, and it takes money. And I think you'll also find that we help take care of the River Greenway that is owned by the citizens because we care so much. We also take care of the depot. The Sioux Falls Community Area Foundation. We do that for nothing. We take care of all their grounds. We gave them the building. Again, we have a lot more invested. We care. Thank you.
And obviously you need parking, but when you are willing to give up a little bit, that's greatly appreciated, particularly when we also have, it's a downtown and it's a campus. So, as much as you can minimize that. And the fact that you put pedestrians first, and the connectivity, which is going to be great for the community. It's going to help economic impact. It's going to make your project more vital. So all of that is just great design. So after all of that gushing to my question, you made a mention of quiet zones. And we talked about that in the first, what specifically, do you have a request or is that
Well,
contingent?
the quiet zones are in many, many communities, and these are the rail yard arms that come down. And what it really does is you can't stop the rumbling of the trains coming through downtown. It allows them to go through a trafficked area like down Sioux Falls with the arms down without blowing the whistles. So if anybody has been down in that area, there's really nothing wrong with the train rumble, but it's a little, if you're not used to it, when they blow that whistle, you know it. And so I got to be honest, I was even hesitant to take on rail yard flats because of that, but I have confidence that we're going to get this done because it's the right thing. It won't only serve rail yard flats, but it's going to serve the rest of the property you want to sell down there, and it's going to serve the redevelopment of all of that area when it comes down to it. So I don't think there's a process. It's going to take a little work, and so I believe that that's what I call public-private partnership. And if everybody doesn't remember Sharapa, the deal was the River Greenway. Sharapa was built and done 3 years before the River Greenway project was complete. Because again, we had the ability to move a little quicker. But ultimately, that was the partnership. That's what made it happen. And I believe that's what I want to try to see here. But I don't have it in contract. It is not required of the city that they do this. But like I say, I really believe in good faith. We ought to work together because it's for the betterment of this community and for the betterment of downtown long term.
And that's what I was looking for, and having, talking to Public Works over the years about it, it's something that I hope we can get done. And as you know, the feds may say that you can't just do this one, maybe you have to do 4, and it may be a phase thing where we're going to have to do one after the other, because it's not cheap to do a quiet zone. But it would be very beneficial to downtown if we could get it done.
And again, I look at the River Greenway was the same type of thing, folks. There was hurdles, government hurdles to overcome. But you know what? It was that commitment. It was that desire to make it happen. And like I say, I'm kind of a bulldog when I get there. I don't have anything required, but I'm going to try to make sure this happens because it won't only help my project, but it will help all of downtown.
And one other thing, and you keyed on it a little bit, and I'm asking somewhat of a rhetorical question because I've had this discussion with other developers, but I always like to have people talk about it publicly because people don't necessarily sometimes understand. Just talking about when you're looking at, let's say, the price point of what you would have for rents,
Yep.
One of the things that people will say many times is, oh, we're just building all of these expensive apartments downtown and there's nothing affordable. Can you talk about, what you get for, the price you figure for rents isn't just a number you pick out of the air. What drives that, and why do you have to select the number that you do for rents?
Well, first of all, construction costs and the cost to develop these things are really what's the driver. Okay, the market is number one. So right now there's a little bit of an imbalance. And you're seeing a lot of big projects going up around the edges of town and et cetera. And you're also seeing these very large projects because they gain a little bit of scale and can try to keep a little more competitive rents, okay? But ours is completely driven by what our cost of construction is and the cost of land. And so when I talk about this thing, and any of you that are in the real estate, Marshall, I know you would be, this actually comes out at a little bit less than a 6% cap rate, and the cash on cash is like 4%. It's not very pretty, okay? But that's when you're building quality. And I want to address that. I mean, we're performing these rents at about $2 per square foot. We probably get $1.50 and $1.75 at Carpenter, I think. We have a product down here called the Edge, which we call our millennial project. They're more one bedrooms. Now that's like a $700-800 apartment and et cetera. So we're trying to do kind of both, feed the market. But that was an old 1960s building that we gutted. We obviously spent a lot of money on it, but we also, because of the original construction and it was old, but we rejuvenated it, we kept those rents a little lower. So it's really a product of construction costs. I'd love to charge a lot less, but I can't make it work. I mean, this isn't a nonprofit, but it's damn close is what I'll tell you. But we commit. We've shown you those numbers. This is what it takes. Our rents would be, we believe we're trying to pro forma our rents based on our construction, a little less than what the new Cascades is downtown, for example, just because of our location, but we'll be in that range.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Counselor Erickson.
Thank you. I have a question for Jeff Eckhoff instead. Sorry, I should call you Jeff 1, Jeff 2, maybe, I don't know. Too many Jeffs. My question is as we talk about the closing of these two properties, the first one, when we receive that money, I'm assuming it goes into the capital fund?
Actually, because it was federal highway money, it has to be used back in a federal highway eligible project. And so that'll go back into some capital project of Director Cotter's, and then the sales tax dollars that would have been used will be then available for any other use that the sales tax dollars would be.
So is there a plan for that in 2020 then, or is it just going to go into the big lump and we'll get eventually appropriated out? Because we just approved the budget, so if this is an additional amount coming in, I'm just kind of curious.
Right.
As far as if that can go towards the bike path or whatever, other projects that were not passed.
That's correct. It'll be an infusion in the 2020 budget. That's correct. I mean, it has to go through the highway system, has to come back, but
Yeah, it has
eventually,
to weave
yes.
through the whole process. Yeah, I get that. My other question, and I know we talked a little bit about this, why the lock in the price. I mean, I get that you want to have an idea of what you're looking at, but it could be beneficial in 2 years. Maybe the market isn't as great and now you're paying $10 and it should only be 7, or maybe he should be paying 13 and he's paying 10. Is that just a roll of the dice just to give him some security in his mind so he has a number to go forward with?
Right. Construction costs, of course, are a big part, but there's so many variables. And as he puts and Jeff can speak to it better than I can, but as he puts his project together, he has to have some certainty of where he is
Right.
as he seeks
Makes sense.
tenants.
Then my other question and I don't want to get hung up on the parcel B because it's no secret. It's not like we've had people banging on our door to want to buy each of these parcels. And so I am super appreciative of Mr. Shoshlik, your passion and your desire to continue to build downtown and be that anchor tenant for. I just think the ball's going to just keep going after that. And so I appreciate your investment in this area because it's not cheap. And no one will get this done like you. I mean, it's just obvious in your passion for this city. So I thank you for that. My question, though, is, so say we have this 2-year option to buy, and Susie Q comes in and says, oh, I have the best project, but it has to include B. I understand it's a first right of refusal, but if they come in and say they want to offer us $15 a square foot, are we stuck, so to speak, or how does that work?
Who was going to come in? Somebody just wanting that piece?
Susie Q. I'm just saying some random person.
I'm going to tell you that I care for the city. If you find that deal and that deal comes along, I will step aside. And I can have a contract that says otherwise. I'm a man of my word. I promise you I would do that.
My thing is, like I said, we haven't had a huge desire for that. And based on your ability to get the jobs done, I think it's the right thing to do. But at the same time, we certainly wouldn't want to hold that property for 2 years if we're missing out on another great opportunity too in the future.
I think if you go down and really analyze this property, you're going to find that there isn't a lot of options, and really the best way is to leverage it with the Sharapa property. I'm just being honest. Yeah. That's why, if you came down and told me that you don't want to give me that option, I'm not going to really have a lot of, I like it because it just allows me to try to go out and it just makes sense to me, but it's not the end of the world to me because I really don't think you're going to find that anybody can do. Because again, if you go back to your RFP process, you're not just going to sell this to somebody that could just throw up some kind of building there. As long as you stay to your commitment that it has to have a big vision that's best for the city, that's all I want.
Right.
That's all I want.
And I appreciate that. And I certainly don't want to be misleading that we shouldn't have that offer for you because I do support that offer for you. I just, at the same time, would hate to miss out on an opportunity should that ever exist.
I just made a commitment to you, and I will stick to that. I promise you.
It's on a hot mic. It's there forever now. Said it's on the hot mic. It's there forever. Again, thank you. I appreciate that, and thanks for answering all the questions.
Councilor Brecky.
Can you put this slide back up? I just want to take a minute to just point out a couple of things. I'm standing here looking at Jeff going, wow, what happens in 15 years? And just, point out back, point to where the Lutheran Social Service is. I mean, that was the anchor. That kind of sort of started it all before Sharapa Place. And I know Jeff remembers this, but the inspiration, for all of this was San Antonio, Texas, has a Riverwalk, and 4 of my colleagues are going to be going there for the National League of Cities, and I would invite you all to enjoy that, because some people from Sioux Falls traveled there and came back, said, we got a river that runs through it. What are we doing? And then I want you to point out the parking ramp. And one of the first things we thought, what? We got a river that runs through it, and we built a parking ramp over it. And none of us could figure out why that ever made sense. And so I'm glad that's gone. And when you think of that, because that was kind of the first building, that Lutheran Social Service, where we were starting to put it into place, and then you came along with your big, genuine, broad vision, which you want, and I think your enthusiasm's infectious, because once you got the bug, now you want to finish what you started. So I think that's terribly exciting. But I just keep looking back and forth at that, and seeing your vision, how you want to finish what you started. So I think it's terribly exciting, and I am particularly happy your interest in using local contractors and local resources. I mean, I think that, Sioux Falls everyone's been successful because of that. Instead of, the philosophy at the chamber is, instead of, arguing over the pie, build a bigger pie, and then there's more pieces to share. So I appreciate that. And then I was wondering about the rental prices as well, because I'm hoping that, we can have different levels, the closer to the downtown, more affordable, as I talk about the 3 circles, you go back out a little way, and we're going to need to provide some housing for our service providers. Those people are going to clean the hotels and do the grounds work, and it's a tremendous cost savings if you can walk to work and not have to park a vehicle, and not to have to pay for a vehicle even. And so it seems to me like you're going to be in the mid-level, with Washington Square being Class A. Are you going to be Class B, Class C, or where do you see yourself
I think from
falling
an
in?
apartment, this will be a Class A apartment project, okay? And again, I mean, and I want to also point out that my daughter is here, my son-in-law is here, part of my family team here, so if I'm not around, they're going to keep this vision going. But we have the Edge, which is that kind of project that we really committed to. We had it rented in 2 months because we did it right, but we also made it affordable. So we're aware of the market. And again, this isn't a build it and you will come. There is a niche for this. So, when I built Sharapa, I pushed the envelope for rents at that point in time, and yet it's worked out very well. And now rents are much higher than Sharapa rents because construction costs have gone up so much. So the biggest key is, again, you have to see what the market will do, but you also got to then, as a developer, know what your costs are. So it's finding that balance point. And I think one of the things that the council has struggled with a little bit, you've tried to put in some standards about quality. I'm struggling because I'm not just going to build something that I'm not proud of, okay? We've built stuff that we're proud of at this point, so it's really difficult. But the one thing we have an advantage over some of the traditional developers is you're looking at my team. I don't have a big expense load. I don't require a lot of costs. So we try to put those dollars into the quality in our project that is long lasting and timeless. So again, I think, there's going to be projects. And one of the things we're looking at is doing more of these edge projects. And the edge kind of tells you the story. It's going to be right on the edge, but these people are walking down to work. It's so successful because it's the environment. It's new and fresh. It's got it's got ping pong tables and play games for kids and etc. So we're going to continue to do some of this, and we commit to you that we'll continue to try to find those type of things. But here, because of the construction and the area, it's a Class A, and we'll be in that $2 range. So,
and I know that we're underbuilt for Class A, so we do need more Class A downtown. And so and again, with this location near the Levitt, again, it's where it needs to be. That is where the Class A needs to be, I think. The other question I've had is Sharapa Place. It has been successful for you. I mean, was a big, bold vision back then. And, your rental space has been full. I delivered a lot of boxed lunches over there when I owned Honey Bay Dam. It was always a hub of energy, in that building.
Yeah. And Sharapa was, because we did it right, we've been 100% full basically since the 3rd month. It's been, because we had local people, just like we're doing here, there's going to be tenant owners in the commercial spaces, okay? They're gonna rent spaces that they're gonna be owners of this project that also rent the spaces, okay? That's how I found that it works, okay? Then I get consistency, I get people that care about their properties. That's just how we kind of make it happen.
And finally, I'm just going to plant a seed here, and I'm not trying to be cute with the phrase, but Councilmember Staley and I have been working on making us a butterfly-friendly and a bee-friendly city. And I don't know that there's a bee opportunity here, although we are talking about that little chunk up there where the line snakes are being protected, about the possibility of there being, honeybees there. But, in our butterfly-friendly concept, as you do your native grasses and native plantings, if you need information about that, what brings the monarchs down, if you need information about that, contact our Parks Department, because we're trying to be more forthcoming with information for boulevards and native grasses and milkweed pods, apparently bring them down. Maybe you already knew that, but I just want to plant that seed with you that if as you're planning this, it would be wonderful, for your tenants to have the butterflies come down. Certain flowers, they're very much attractive.
I think if you came to the back part of Sharapa, you'll see a lot of our native flowers attract that. I also maintain and take care of 1,100 acres of native grasses and wildflowers and trees. So I'm a huge environmentalist, so anything we could do that way, I would love to do, because, we're about that. And so we'd love to understand more. It is all about experiences for people. Again, we don't have to do all these extra things and create the courtyards and bring in the sculpture walk. But hey, folks, that's what makes Sioux Falls cool. That's what's making this city the place to come to and where people want to live. So again, we're kind of simple, but if you do that, it also helps get the tenants in there and they stay. I mean, it's still pretty simple when it comes down to it. But it's fun to do too, and it's fun to serve your community and do it right.
Thank you.
Councilor Staley.
I just wanted to respond to Councilor Brecky talking about that parking ramp. She said, why would someone have that across the river? I'm going to tell you why, Councilor Brecky.
I've been wanting
Well,
for years.
it was the industrial era versus aesthetics. Back years ago, when we had allowed them to destroy Seney Island, we put a railroad trestle in down there. The falls used to be huge, and we allowed the mechanisms of industrialization to blast those things away. You know that. I mean, and when I moved here in 84, I mean, the park, Falls Park was there. Well, it didn't exist, but it was a scary place. Transients down there. The city of Sioux Falls allowed that thing to just be neglected because there seemed to be no appreciation for that beautiful area down there. So that's still part of this, I think, urbanizational thing that says we're going to build and we're going to be the biggest and best and lots of concrete, and let's put the parking ramp there. Now we're kind of getting back to appreciating our history and preserving it. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But 2 things, Jeff, are you going to be is this parcel in the downtown Sioux Falls designated business area? Are you, because you're on that side of the tracks, you're going to, no, well, just the Downtown Sioux Falls Association.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're already members of that with all of our properties.
So,
yes.
so what I would say to you, in the discussions we're having with the Whittier business neighborhoods, you're going to be closer neighbors to them, right? Because you're going to be, so that, if any way you can reach out to them to help them, either they are going to become part of the downtown organization or to have their own, I think that's going to be a benefit to you.
You said the Whittier neighborhood?
Yes. Because we're having this discussion about what's happening over in the other side of the tracks.
And I look at this as a reach out. It's not across, but at the same point, somebody said, well, Jeff, you're building that courtyard and you're going to have all these people come in there and they're going to be sleeping there and et cetera. And I said, you know what? We're going to invite people to enjoy that. We just handle it differently. We've had no problems at Sharapa. We want to be inclusive with the folks and et cetera. We want to reach out. We don't want trouble. So but by lighting it properly, by becoming inviting, we'll make it work, folks.
Good. That's a great energy to have. And this last thing I wanted to ask is, as you're digging into that quartzite, did I hear you say you're going to be using some quartzite on your buildings?
This project has not got a lot of, the court site will be included more in some of the highlights in the landscaping and et cetera, but it's really meant to be a little industrial looking, more brick, not as much quartzite in the building itself.
Can that ever be reused as you are doing your building? Or that has to be?
This is a different form of quartzite to it tends to be a little crumbly, so it might be used for aggregate in roads and et cetera. But the Sharapa quartzite came from the Jasper Quarry, which had the right kind of stones. So if you think about LG Everest up by Del Rapids, that quartzite can't be used for buildings either. It crumbles, it breaks up. The quartzite at Jasper did work for buildings. Now I'll tell you a sad story. They're going to close the Jasper Quarry for commercial construction purposes. Why? Too costly. You can't make it work. It's sad. Now, we've asked them that as we go along with some of these projects that we're going to build, that we might be able to reopen part of it to do highlights and make it happen. They're willing to maybe work with us, but it is so terribly costly, it's just not worked viably for them, unfortunately.
Councilor Neitzer. A couple other questions that I had. A couple of probably two of your biggest risks would be environmental and then the bedrock. Now, I think when we bought the land, we took off 6 inches of dirt, and I think we did like a phase 1 environmental assessment. So how do you feel about the environmental piece and the unknowns? And then the bedrock, you indicated that there's places where it's as little as 2 feet deep. How confident do you feel about that and causing risk to your project?
Well, first of all, that's why I think the land price, is fair and maybe should be the $7, but we came to a good agreement. That's what I call compromise. The world needs more of that everywhere. Within that, we did our own drill. They allowed us to go in and take the building site and determine this. There is potentially some environmental issues in the front part of the site, but it's spotty. This would be a deal where it's not all the ground is the, so as we're digging it up, there'll be some that'll have to be taken to the landfill, but most of the dirt on this site can be reused to build berms and to do landscaping and be covered up that way. From a quartzite standpoint, it really is affecting our design right now more than anything, so we may have to start, so there is a deal where we'd like to go down, and if it's quartzite that's very crumbly, you might be able to use a machine and kind of pull it off. It's when you got to get into blasting that it becomes really fairly cost ineffective. So again, we're just trying to weigh those options. There's risk in what I do, okay? I take kind of considered risk, and that's what we're dealing with, but it is not something that really is going to kill this project. There isn't that much dirt there because of the quartzite so close to the ground, number one. Number two is we have a general idea where we have, and we know where the quartzite will be, and we're going to investigate that to determine if we can go down. And we were only planning on going down about 5 feet and putting our parking in that depth is all. We knew we couldn't go any lower. So we kind of know. And I think that's a good question, because I think the Black Iron project across the way ran into a lot of problems, but they were very dependent on going down for their parking. If you look at our design, we're just going to have to if that happens, our parking will have to rise, and we'll have to do a little bit of design changes, but it really won't essentially change what we have there.
Okay, great, and that is true. That was something that really threw a monkey wrench in the plans of that last project. The other thing, going back again to proformas and things like that. So for the, number one, is this a project you would be syndicating largely? As in what? Syndicating, looking for getting outside investors, or are you doing it?
No, I don't syndicate. I mean, I've got the Howe family, my family, and then what will be kind of some of our tenants will end up owning it, but our family will be funding more than 50% of the project, and so I've already made arrangements with the bankers and et cetera, but we have the capability, so we don't really go out and syndicate this. I would guess something like that might happen more on Sharapa 2, where you're talking about a $50 million project, but not this one.
Okay, now syndicating or not, obviously, those of you that do this always talk about pro formas and that you're not a charity and all of that. So you almost have something, because obviously, whether it's an investor or you, there's got to be some sort of rate of return that you're looking for. For example, you want to start being in the gravy after so many years, or, I mean, is that, just for the average person, again, when they say that, like when you say, well, the pro forma doesn't work with these numbers, that doesn't necessarily mean anything to somebody?
So, you know, all of us have retirement monies and et cetera, and so you can choose the stock market, you can choose the bond market, you can put it into CDs, and you can put it into properties, you can put it into venture capital. All those have different risk and reward formulas. So again, if you're going to buy a bond, you might get a 2% return. When you go into the stock market, it used to be kind of a 7 to 8% return that you would look at, okay? Now you might get a little bit more of this, so you got risk and return. So there's a fair amount of risk here, and so the idea of getting a 6 cap rate, the cap rates are coming down because interest rates are coming down. I'd rather have seen more like a 7% cap rate, and I would prefer an 8 to 10% cash on cash return. That's where I would like to be with my projects like this, but I'm willing to go in a little lower because we think long term. Again, Sioux Falls is continuing to grow. Downtown is continuing to be vibrant. I gained some tax advantages by leveraging this project and et cetera. So there's a combination of those things. But I think it's just important that people just get this vision that there's just zillions of dollars being made, and I want to make it clear there's not.
And that's why I wanted to get, so to finish up, to maybe rephrase it so that just the average person would understand, and maybe terms that they could understand. For example, if I could invest in something like a T-bill or a bond with the U.S. government, which is going to be guaranteed very, very, very low risk of losing money. But because of that, my rate of return is going to be very small, just a % or two, something like that. If I'm willing to put money in the stock market, there's more risk. The reward may be higher. And so, in this sort of project is, anything like these are going to be very, let's just say, higher risk. And so if you were going to get, let's say you were willing to drop your rents, if we said you have to drop your rents, keep dropping them, and you only got a 1% rate of return, very few people, almost nobody would do that, because you're taking a huge amount of risk for very little return. You could just put your money in a CD and get the same return. So you've got to make the numbers work. And the same thing if you syndicate, investors are not going to go into your risky project for a 2% rate of return. They're going to need to see 8 or 10 or something like that. Is that?
Yeah, and you're exactly, so that's when I talk, the best way to think about it would be if you're thinking stocks, 7 to 8%, when I talk to cap rate is the real 6% return, is kind of, if you didn't have any financing and you got in your rents and you paid your expenses, you get a 6% return on this project if you're 95% occupied. Okay? So the risk is, if I'm 80% occupied, I'm not even going to cash flow, okay? So yes, there is risk. Why do I do it? Again, we've had good success in keeping our properties occupied, number one. Number two, again, construction costs go up. So this project, based on my knowledge, would be in 20 years, it's going to cost twice as much to build. Now, again, I have children and I have grandchildren. So none of this means much to me anymore because I'm pretty well set. I'm working on that generation and the one next. So I look at it a little bit longer term, and I think this is a good investment for my family. I also love this community, and I like doing things. I'm not an artist, and this is as close I can get to creating something that at least I can put my name on and maybe outlast, me when I go.
Well, thanks for your investment, and thanks for just kind of helping me just talk through it, because I think it's important just that people understand that you as developers don't just go out there and just pick rents, and that you're swimming in money all the time, and that it's, so it's
again,
complicated.
We want to be as competitive with our rents as we possibly can, because it's a competitive world, okay? So when I say that, if all of a sudden I said that this would pro forma at only $3 per square foot, I can't build it, because I can't put anybody in there at $3 a square foot. So again, the market dictates. We are a free enterprise system, and it does work when it comes down to it. So we're looking to try to find ways to be as efficient as we can, but we're also looking at things that are different. Sharapa was a green building. Not everybody's building green buildings, but that's a long-lasting, that's a commitment to the environment, and it didn't cost that much more, but it took a lot of work. And again, we're looking to build a green building here as much as we can, and we've got some real creative ideas we're working on, but we don't have all that fleshed out yet.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, thanks again, Jeff. As has been said tonight, we appreciate your energy and your enthusiasm.
Well, thank you, folks, and I promise you, as you look at me, I will get this done, and you will not have a situation where it doesn't get completed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, the audit report. Shauna Nelson, welcome.
Right. I know.
Don't take it personal, Shane.
Wow. All right, good afternoon, evening now. I'm Shauna Nelson, Internal Audit Manager, here to present Report 1803, the Purchasing Card Program. This audit was conducted by Abby Van Melanati and was presented to the Audit Committee on September 30th, 2019. Little background, the purchasing card is intended for employees who are involved in the ordering of goods and services for the city. The transactions that were covered in this audit were for a 12-month period of July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2018. The current issuance of P cards are 264 within the city. Of this time frame, 12,609 transactions were conducted, and the amount spent was $5,661,822. Some of the benefits of the purchasing card program include time savings, increased efficiencies, and as well as a rebate program. Some of those time and efficiencies are reducing the amount of time to receive items, eliminating delays in operations, reduced amount of paperwork, as well as administration costs in that time. Since 2014, we have received $360,489.83 in the rebate program with our P cards. The objectives of this audit were to, 1, determine if purchasing card transactions are appropriate and in compliance with city policy and procedures. 2, determine if city purchasing card program controls adequately mitigate the risk. 3, determine whether the city's purchasing card program is operating effectively in accordance with leading business practices and that card holders have purchasing limits in accordance with actual purchasing activity. And what we have found with the audit, finding 1 was that cardholder training provided by the purchasing department is inconsistent. Finding number 2, 2 individuals who have access to credit card allocations in the financial system who also have a City of Sioux Falls purchasing card in their name are allocating their own purchasing card transactions. And finding number 3 was the city's purchasing card program guide does not include any direction regarding the process of required for an increased spending limit on an employee's purchase card, should be a legitimate need arise. And then getting into the recommendations, our first recommendation, initial and ongoing training is provided consistently to all cardholders who are issued a City of Sioux Falls purchasing card in their name. The purchasing card program guide states training will be provided by the program administrator. We recommend trainings be documented and filed as proof that cardholders did in fact attend required training. The management response was that they agree and will utilize Target Solutions, a training software, to develop a training program for cardholders once the software is purchased. And in the meantime, the city will relocate the training records in a centralized electronic filing system to track the cardholder training. The expected implementation for the electronic filing was July 31st of 2019, and then the Target Solutions purchase will be in 2020. Recommendation number 2, is that management ensure proper segregations of duties exist by ensuring those employees that have both purchasing ability with the city purchasing card, as well as a reallocation access in the financial system, do not reallocate their own purchases. Any employee with both reallocation access and purchasing ability are to have their purchases reallocated by a different employee with a reallocation access. The management response where they agree with the recommendation and they've already addressed. It is complete for the implementation. Recommendation number 3 was that management develop and document in policy and procedure a written process for requests for higher spending limits for all City of Sioux Falls purchasing cards. The management response agrees, and a new policy has been inserted into the purchase card program guide as follows. To request a higher limit, daily and or monthly, users shall have their supervisor email the program administrator requesting a higher limit. The request shall include the following information: the amount of increase, whether it be daily or monthly, and justification for the increase. Upon receipt of the email and review of the justification, the program administrator will raise the daily or monthly limit if the justification warrants the increase. At this time, the implementation has been complete. In conclusion of the audit, overall adequate controls exist over the purchasing card process. Many leading practices recommended by the Government Financial Officers Association, the GFOA, are being followed, as well as the recommendations will provide additional assurance that controls are in place to mitigate risks. And at that time, this concludes.
That was quick.
Sorry.
Oh, nice work. Do you have any questions, counselors? Counselor Erickson.
First off, Shauna, I love these. I think that the summary, the highlight is super, super helpful, as well as your presentation. I mean, if we want the additional detail, it kind of reminds me like the finance department where page numbers there, you can go and look in the big book if you want to go look in it. But I appreciate the effort to maybe make it a little more user-friendly for those of us that don't speak audit language. For me personally. So thank you for this. This is really, really helpful. So with that said, I have 3 questions. I'm looking at the purchasing cards by department. I'm assuming that fire and rescue have 37 cards because they're 24-hour shifts and I see them at the grocery store all the time buying food for meals and stuff, and assuming more need that card versus another department. Is that a fair?
I'm sorry.
The fire and rescue, for the number of cards, they have 37.
They do have 37. They have 11 different stations. They also have shift work, so you have to accommodate the shift work as well as the different stations and the different type of purchasing needs that they have.
So one of my questions too, then, how to qualify to get one of the cards? I know I was reading in here, it says that the supervisor would determine if you need it or not. Is there a threshold as far as you have to be, I'm going to make up a number, a C2 employee, or you have to be a certain, you can be anywhere from a groundskeeper up to the director of finance?
That's a correct statement, yes.
Because that's interesting to me too. I don't know that I really have an opinion on it, but I just thought maybe there would be more of a guideline with that. And then is there a transaction max amount? Like my card may have $20,000. Do I have a transaction amount that you can only spend $1,000 a day, or
Correct.
what is it?
It's 1,000. You have a daily limit of $1,000 a day, except for what we call the super users. The super users are higher. Those would be essentially your fleet or parts worker, your water rec, where if something does go down within the operation, they have the ability to go and replace the item so that the operation does not go down.
It still falls below the state limit though of $14,000 or $24,000 maybe it is, I don't know. Okay, then my last question, 50 it is now, yeah, that's right, it used to be 25. My last question is through the audit, did you look at actual purchases, or was it more just kind of the high level? Did you go in and look at, firefighter Tom has a card and here's what he was spending some of his funds on, or how did you assess that?
Well, there was an audit number that was picked out that Abby went and tested. However, just so you know, because of the high amount of P cards. In the future, we're going to be doing reoccurring or consistent audits to do those types. I know that in the past, we've just ran a report just to look at where the items were being purchased to see if there were any red flags. However, the administrator has the ability to turn on and turn off where cards can purchase at. For example, you can't just go and with your regular purchase card go and reserve plane tickets, for example.
Right.
Things like
Okay.
that. There are restrictions on the administration level as well.
Got you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the report.
Other questions? Counselor Brecky?
And this isn't so much an audit question, but just your observations as you went through this process. You know, I noticed the city has received approximately $360,409 back in rebates from the bank. And again, as you went through this process and looked at it, did you see opportunities where the city could be more aggressive in using credit cards in order to get that 2% rebate? And that would again be for the council in a separate discussion, but because you just did the deep dive into it, I'm wondering if that isn't something that maybe should be encouraged.
You know, that's a really good question. I know Scott Rust is working on that and works through that annually. And I do believe he has and is working on increasing limits for specific departments so that we can get more of the rebate back. Does that answer? Or would you like Scott to help with that?
I would like to just hear what your thoughts are on it, because I think there's a real opportunity out there to do that.
Good evening, Scott Rust, Purchasing Manager. Yeah, there is a real opportunity out there to utilize our credit cards more than what we are, and we are looking at doing that. If you go back to when I was here for the audit committee meeting, I'm buying small equipment with these cards, and we're getting that rebate back. Why wouldn't you? So for example, we're buying skid steer loaders with credit cards. They're $40,000 pieces of equipment, and we can run the card on them. Yes. If you can do it, you do it. We're paying bills with credit cards too. It's just streamlining the AP process for us. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at that are helping us streamline the process here by utilizing these cards. And thus this rebate, before we changed to this program back in 2014, we got 0 rebate. So this is big
So
for
this
us.
is the tip of the iceberg.
This is the tip of the, exactly. So
I would just make a comment. That's one of the things I stumbled onto when I was in small business, because during the holidays I had these huge ham bills, and if you pay your big bills or your big pieces of equipment with a credit card and then pay it off timely before any kind of fee kicks in, you get this 2%, you know, and religiously pay it off timely. You know, you get this huge rebate, and I got, you know, and by doing that, I would get the biggest check, you know, that you can get. I think $5,000 we could get, you know, and I'd get that every year until corporate figured it out, and then corporate Honey Baked wouldn't let us do that anymore, because really they, you know, by us doing it that way, you know, they were making more money if they had us pay it without using a credit card. But you know, I think
it's free money for the taxpayers.
It's low-hanging
fruit,
fruit,
a way for us
and
to,
it's just all it is about is you just managing it carefully so that you never, you know, you just pay. And of course, you guys know how to do that. You know, pay the bills timely, and don't have to pay, you know, any of the interest or the fees.
It has been one of the most successful pieces of this program, has been that rebate. And that was one of the things and one of the goals that we looked at when we brought in this card back in 2014, was to find a card that had a good rebate.
All righty, well, thank you.
You bet, thank you.
Counselor Staley?
Which card is that?
We're using a card from JP Morgan Chase. So we were with US Bank for a little while, and now we're back with JP Morgan Chase, and that card is currently it's just a little bit less than 2%, about 1.65 to 1.7% is about what we're getting back. So.
And do you ever incur any interest or fees?
No, we pay our bills right away.
You never have, okay, good, great, yeah. Thanks.
Do they have any cap on it?
No, there really, there is no cap per se. You can just continue to, you know, put as much on the card as you can. Again, it's getting a little bit more difficult right now to get more rebate as we're trying to find new ways to do things. But again, you got to take the good with the bad. You know, you don't want to incur more work just to try and get the rebate type thing. So you got to really kind of balance it out. And, you know, I'm working with the finance manager who oversees AP to find opportunities of where we can, find areas where we can pay some more bills with the card. We're finding some people just don't want to let us pay with a card. So.
Counselor Neitzer?
Yeah, and to that, do you have some vendors that are resistant to do that because they don't want to pay the processing fee? Like they might be paying 2 or 3% for the credit card run instead of you sending them a check?
Yeah, most of our suppliers in the city are really good about it. They take the card, no questions asked. It's the local suppliers here, when I say, hey, I want to pay for that, $20,000 widget, they kind of, can you just give me a PO for that? And, we honor that. I mean, they're good suppliers to us, they're good to us, and we don't want to hurt them either, so we understand, so.
Okay. And just again, to comment for Shauna, how much we all appreciate the highlights page. And the audit formatting is being revamped as well, so you'll see that soon. And this will go online along with the audit, so there'll be 2 links. There'll be the audit, and then there'll be the highlights page. So if somebody just wants to get a quick what happened in the audit without having to read multiple pages, that'll be there. So really nice idea. Thanks.
Anybody else? One quick question, I think, with Councilor Erickson had touched on it. So if you get a P card, everybody can spend up to $1,000 a day, and unless you're a super user?
Yeah, so let me clarify that a little bit. So if you come to, let's say your supervisor comes to me and says, hey, my employee needs a P card, they can spend up to $1,000 without having to get any quotations on any item that they need for their department. And then those purchases are reviewed by their supervisor through our system. Now, if you're a super user, you are trained to a little bit higher level. You have to get quotes over $1,000, and they can go all the way up to $3,000 to buy those supplies for like fleet management, water purification, water reclamation. Those are where our super users are at right now, because they're replenishing inventory and they're maintaining those industrial mechanical systems in the water reclamation plant and the water purification plant, and obviously our snow plows and all that sort of stuff down at Fleet. So they spend a little bit higher level, but they go out and get the quotations for that. The people in the purchasing office, obviously we can go higher than that because we work in this world day to day. We're the ones paying those bills, ordering that equipment above those thresholds. So we're the only ones that can go any higher than that. There's a few of us that work in emergency management as an additional function for Regan, where if we need to buy things, during an emergency, we have that capability to do that with our cards.
So you as a super user, you in particular can $40,000 skid steer.
Yeah,
or
I can do
piece
it.
of equipment.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
What was the number again? Maybe you said that in the question. I think Councilor Brecky was talking about. What was the total rebate then earned by the cards back to the city last year? Did you say the amount?
It was over 100,000 last year. On total, it was 360,000.
$364.90.
But I want to say that's the total. I'd have to go back to the report. It's in the report. $129,000 last year.
Oh, that was the total for all the years. Okay.
For all of last year, 2018, that came back and that went back into the general fund for just using a card.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Audit Department, for all you do. I think we're done. Do we have any public comment on any of our items today? All right. If not, we will adjourn. Thank you. Hold on.
Do we need to do the
We
executive
aren't doing
session?
executive
We're not.
session.
Okay. Just making
Sorry, I
sure.
should have announced that earlier. All right, we'll adjourn. Thanks.
I'm just going to read it if you did.